So everyone knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. I mean, that's the first thing you think of.
Absolutely. It's his defining invention.
But here's the thing we found. What if the bulb itself, that little glowing piece of glass, wasn't actually the most important part?
What if the real invention was the whole system behind it?
Exactly. The entire power grid, the massive, complex infrastructure that brought electricity into our homes in the first place.
That's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to get past that myth of the lone inventor. We'll start with how his teachers, believe it or not, thought he was basically unteachable.
And we'll end with how his work, his entire system, is still powering your life right now.
So let's start at the beginning. He was born in 1847 in Ohio.
Youngest of 7 children. And that story about him struggling in school, it's completely true. His teachers just thought his mind was always somewhere else.
And that might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. His mother pulled him out of school and decided to teach him herself. She saw his curiosity.
So he wasn't just, reading textbooks.
Not at all. He was diving into really complex science books and setting up these incredible chemistry experiments in his family's basement. That hands-on approach really defined his whole life.
And he also had severe hearing loss, starting from a young age.
He did, which was obviously a huge challenge. But you could argue it also helped him focus, without all the outside distractions.
That drive he had was just incredible. His first jobs were all about the hustle.
Right, selling newspapers and candy on trains.
But he was always learning something on the side. That's where he picked up telegraphy.
Which is sending messages over electrical wire. So that put him right at the center of the big technology of today.
And that experience led him to make probably the most important decision of his entire career.
Moving to Menlo Park, New Jersey in 1876. He didn't just build a new workshop there. He built the world's first industrial research laboratory.
People call it the invention factory. What does that actually mean, a factory for inventions? It sounds so modern.
Because it was. I mean, before Edison, you had this idea of the lone genius, right? Someone working by themselves, waiting for a flash of inspiration.
And Edison just flipped that completely.
Totally. He hired a whole team of experts, chemists, physicists, machinists, and made invention a predictable, organized process.
So the goal was to churn out inventions that people could actually buy and use.
Yes, exactly. It was the birth of the modern R&D department. His team would spend hours and hours testing materials, documenting every single failure in their notebooks.
That organized approach, that was the real revelation.
It was. It completely changed how technology gets made.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about what the world was actually like before the light bulb.
I mean, when the sun went down, it was dark.
Really dark.
Yeah.
And your options for light were what? Candles? Oil lamps?
Both of which were serious fire hazards, especially in cities where everyone was packed together.
And in the cities, you had gas lights on the streets.
You did, but gaslighting had its own problems. The pipes could leak, cause explosions. And inside, they were hot and they smelled awful. Just not something you'd want in your living room.
So for years, scientists have been trying to create some kind of electric light.
Right, they had these things called arc lamps, but they were way too bright, like blindingly bright. And they were noisy and used a ton of power.
Useless for a home, then.
Completely. The real challenge was to create a light that was safe, steady, and most importantly, lasted long enough to be practical. Early versions burned out in just a few minutes. Edison knew that was the problem he had to solve.
Which brings us to the most famous part of the story. The filament.
The filament. That's the tiny little wire inside the bulb that has to glow when electricity runs through it.
And the amount of work they put into finding the right one is just mind-boggling.
It really is. It shows you how much hard work this took. Edison didn't invent the idea of an incandescent bulb. Other people were working on it.
But he was the first to find a material that actually worked, one that you could mass produce.
And they tested everything. The reports say they tested over 6,000 different materials.
6,000.
Mostly vegetable fibers, but also cardboard, platinum wires, and yes, the stories are true.
Hairs from his assistants' beards.
Hairs from their beards. It just shows you how difficult this was.
So what were they looking for? It wasn't just about glowing.
No, it had to meet 2 really tough criteria. First, it couldn't melt or break. It had to survive incredibly high heat.
And second,
it needed high electrical resistance.
Okay, let's break that down. Resistance basically means the material fights against the electricity flowing through it.
Exactly. And that fight is what generates the heat. This process is called Joule heating. You need that resistance to be high enough so the filament gets white hot and glows, but not so low that it just does nothing. It's a very delicate balance.
And after all that testing, all that failure, they finally found it in 1879.
Carbonized bamboo thread.
Great.
It was perfect. The fibers were incredibly tough, and they had just the right amount of resistance. That first successful one burned for over 1,200 hours.
1,200, wow.
And that's when this became a real product. What's amazing is they immediately sent people all over the world, to Japan, to South America, just to find the absolute best species of bamboo for their filaments.
So once they had the filament, the next big problem was keeping it from, instantly burning up.
Right. The air itself is the enemy.
So how does the bulb actually work?
Yeah.
The physics behind it seems pretty simple, but the engineering must have been really tough.
It was immense. So first, you have the glass bulb. You have to pump all the air out of it.
So you create a vacuum.
To create a vacuum. And you do that to stop the oxygen from letting the hot filament just combust. But making a perfect, long-lasting vacuum seal on an item you're mass-producing, that was a huge technological hurdle in the 1880s.
So you flip a switch, electricity flows into the bulb and hits that high-resistance filament.
And because the electricity has to struggle to get through, it generates all that heat, that Joule heating we talked about.
And the heat makes the filament glow white hot, which is the light we see.
That's it. The elegance of it is how they made that process durable and cheap enough for everyone. And that basic principle is still used in a lot of bulbs today.
But again, a light bulb is pretty useless if you can't plug it in anywhere.
Right. The bulb created the demand, but Edison then had to invent the supply. He had to create the whole utility.
This meant building the entire power grid from scratch. He started with the Pearl Street Station in New York City.
The world's first central power plant. It used these giant steam engines to generate electricity.
And he had to invent all the other stuff that went with it, too, the hidden inventions.
Things you don't even think about. Insulated wires that could run safely under the street. He even had to invent meters to measure how much power each customer was using so he could send them a bill.
And this whole system ran on direct current, or DC, which leads us to one of the biggest rivalries in science history.
The battle of the currents.
So Edison's DC system was great, but it had a massive flaw.
A fatal flaw, really. It lost power very, very quickly over distance. To power a big city, you would have needed a new power station almost every square mile. It just wasn't scalable.
And that's where Nikola Tesla comes in.
Right. Tesla, working with George Westinghouse, was championing alternating current, or AC.
And the big difference with AC is that you can change its voltage really easily with a transformer.
And that solved the distance problem completely. You could generate power at a super high voltage, send it hundreds of miles with very little power loss, and then use another transformer to step it down to a safe level for people's homes.
So it's just way more efficient.
Infinitely more efficient. But Edison fought it aggressively. He claimed high voltage AC was incredibly dangerous.
He even funded the development of the electric chair using AC just to prove how deadly it was and scare people away from his competitor's system.
It was a brutal fight. But in the end, AC's efficiency won out. It became the standard for the grid, even though we still use DC for, anything with a battery.
So with the grid established, the light bulb could finally go everywhere. And the change to society was just massive.
It created the 24-hour world we live in now. I mean, think about it. Before this, your life ran by the sun.
Factories could stay open all night. Families could spend time together in the evening reading or playing games.
Cities got safer because the streets were lit. It allowed cities to grow and stay active around the clock. It was a fundamental shift.
No wonder they called him the Wizard of Menlo Park.
Not at all. He had over 1,000 patents. The light bulb was just one of them.
We're also talking about the phonograph, the first machine to record and play back sound.
The start of the entire music industry. And then the first motion picture cameras, which kicked off the movie industry. He was everywhere.
He even worked on storage batteries for early electric cars.
His legacy isn't just a list of inventions, though. It's a whole way of working. You know his famous quote,
"Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration."
That sums up Menlo Park perfectly. He showed the world that failure isn't a mistake. Failing thousands of times was just a necessary part of the process to find the one answer that works.
So his real genius wasn't just making a piece of glass glow. It was designing the entire interconnected system that made electricity a part of everyone's daily life.
Right. And here's something to think about. Even though AC won that huge battle for the power grid over a century ago, think about what's happening now.
Electric vehicles,
Yeah.
laptops, smartphones.
All running on batteries and direct current. So you have to wonder, What new battle of the currents might be happening right now in your own lifetime that's going to decide the future of how we store and use energy?
Something to think about next time you flip a switch. Good luck with your studies.